let's work today on one very interesting and important verse. I call this session, Be Sober, Be Watchful. And it's a verse in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. Let's take a look at it. It says, Be sober, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. Now, I've highlighted these key words, sober, watchful, devour. And Satan is a roaring lion. So we have, here we are, here he is, he's the roaring lion. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into a concordance and we're going to start with the word sober. And if you go to a concordance, I suggest you go to BibleHub.com and you put in our verse, 1 Peter 5:8, and you can click on the word sober and it will take you to this page. Now on the left is Strong's definition, and I tell people don't do Strong's definition. What I want you to do is I want you to go to the right column, and here is the concordance. Here's where it will list the verses in which the Greek word nepho appears. And it says here, I can't remember how many, I can't read it from here, how many appearances there are. And then you go down and it'll list the different verses. This is the very first verse in which it appears. So let's take a look. What I've done is I've selected, here's the arrow showing, go down and do all the verses. I don't think there are too many. I think there are like 6 of them or something like that. So this is something that you can do. Now I've picked out a verse that I think will help us see here. Let us not sleep as the rest do, but let us stay alert and sober. Now this word alert means awake or watchful. So when we go back to our verse in 1 Peter, we have be sober, be watchful. All right? So sober means, well, I'm going to show you what sober means in just a minute. But I want to take a look first at your adversary, the devil. And he's like a roaring lion. So a lion, you know, I spent some time on a safari in South Africa, and we were out in the bush. There's 6 of us with a ranger in the front and a ranger in the back, and we were taught about animal behavior. And the lion roars to frighten you, and if you start to run, he considers you prey, and he will go after you. So, you know, we asked, well, what happens if we see a lion? And they said, don't turn and run. That's the most important thing. You turn your head down because you don't want to look that lion in the eye. That's a kind of a confrontation. And then you walk back slowly. You don't turn and run. So Satan is like a roaring lion trying to frighten you. He's seeking someone to devour. Now that word devour is really very interesting. And I've picked it up here in Matthew. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you blind guides who strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. What it means is to take a huge gulp of water. That's what it means. And in this verse, the Pharisees were studying the law, but they weren't getting to the importance of the law. They were doing tiny little, you know, jot and tittle, every tiny little thing they would argue about instead of getting to the higher principle. So what we have here is we have be sober, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. And I do have to explain the word sober, which I didn't do a very good job in these pictures. So let me explain it to you. Sober means to have your mind empty of anything cloudy. So when you drink wine or beer and you have too much of that, it makes your mind foggy. And when your mind is foggy and not clear, you're not aware of the things that Satan is doing. And you can only be watchful if your mind is clear. And that applies not just to liquor, it applies to all kinds of things that can fog our mind. And I think this is a very important verse because it applies to all of us in our lives today. And Satan is like a roaring lion, and we have to be aware of the things that Satan is doing in our lives. We have to be sober, meaning our mind is clear, and we have to be watchful and alert because Satan is very, very devious and tricky. So that's kind of a fun verse, and I trust you enjoyed it. Shalom.
BibleInteract is a group of Bible scholars and biblical archaeologists who promote the Hebraic nature of Scripture and view the two Testaments as one unified message. They explain how they use a first-century approach to searching the Scriptures, and they share their methods and discoveries for discussion and dialogue. They invite your comments and participation on BibleInteract.tv.